With increasing concern about the environment, oil companies are turning their attention to what happens with their emissions before the fuel is burned in your car. Motor vehicle exhaust is one of many offenders contributing to air pollution. But there is another source related to the operation of our cars other than fuel emissions, and that's gasoline vapor. While gasoline vapor represents only about 1% of total emissions, it is a contributor to smog. A pilot project initiated in British Columbia aims to collect gasoline vapor and recycle it back into gasoline.
The governments have been involved, the federal government, the provincial and the Greater Vancouver Regional District have all been involved in the studies, but the costs of the project are being borne by the companies.
The escape of gasoline vapor occurs at several key points. During the loading and unloading of gasolines from bulk loading terminals to delivery trucks and tanker trucks, at delivery to retail service stations, and finally from the gas pump and into individual fuel tanks. At each of these points, some gasoline vapor escapes into the environment. Shell Canada is one of the first companies to have their operations in place for the vapor recovery project.
The process that we're developing is one of starting at the service station and collecting the vapors from the tank, taking it through hoses back into the top of the truck and not venting it to atmosphere. And that vehicle in turn is going back to another tank where the same process is carried on. The vapors then are being transferred into the larger storage tanks. And eventually those vapors will work their way all the way back into the refinery where they will be recovered and reworked back into gasoline.
The participating petroleum companies foresee being able to absorb the initial $10 million cost of the program over the next few years by recycling the vapor back into reusable gasoline. At this point, there's no direct cost to the consumer or the taxpayer. As far as the consumer goes, there won't be much evidence that vapor recovery is actually even in place during the first stages. With the current technology that's being used in the project, 95% of escaping vapor can successfully be captured before it escapes into the environment. With the success of this project and the fact that it can more or less pay for itself, the question remains as to whether the government will introduce legislation on gasoline vapor recovery. Environment Canada's Ed Witusiak comments,
I don't envisage a need for regulations at this time because the industry has voluntarily indicated a move to implement themselves at their cost vapor recovery systems.
The pilot project, which is the first of its kind in Canada, is being tested in Vancouver to give companies and governments information for similar efforts across the country. The goal of the oil industry here is to complete the project by 1995.
Eventually, this technology will make its way right to the pumps, much like it already has in California. And we'll be right back.